This is the story of a woman who had nothing, no savings, no plan, no way out, until she started asking herself one question every single night. In 90 days, that question changed everything. What she wrote in a $5 notebook will surprise you. But first, tell me in the comments, what time is it right now? Where you are? And what are you hoping will change in your life this year? Drop it below. Like this video if you're ready to listen. Let's begin. In a small town with one main street and a diner that never closed, there lived a 34-year-old woman named Elena. Elena worked the breakfast shift and the dinner shift 6 days a week at a diner called Rosie's. Her feet hurt by 10 in the morning. Her apron always smelled like coffee and bacon grease. She had one daughter, Mia, 7 years old, and one car that only started if you pumped the gas pedal 3 times first. Her apartment had 2 rooms. The heater rattled all night. She kept a jar on the counter labeled Mia's shoes, and most weeks it stayed empty. Elena had a dream, small and quiet, the kind you don't say out loud in case it laughs at you. She wanted to bake, not just for holidays, for a living. She had a notebook full of recipes she'd never sold to anyone but her neighbors. Every night, walking home past the bakery on 5th Street, closed, dark, for rent, she would think, someday. But someday never had a date on it. One Tuesday, Elena's card was declined at the grocery store. She was buying flour and food coloring for Mia's birthday cake. $12. Declined. The cashier waited. The line behind her waited. And Elena put the flour back. That night, Mia asked, "Mommy, can we still make the cake?" Elena said yes, and used what was already in the cupboard. The cake came out lopsided. Mia loved it anyway. But Elena sat on the bathroom floor after Mia fell asleep and cried in a way she hadn't let herself cry in years. Not because of the cake, because she realized, I am working every single day and I am still $12 short of a birthday cake. Something in her went quiet and hard, like a decision forming, before the words arrived. The next morning, an old man came into Rosie's, like he did most Fridays. Mr. DeLuca. Everyone knew him. He owned 3 restaurants across town, and yet he always ordered the same thing: black coffee, no cream, and he always left early before the rush. That morning, Elena had brought in a small batch of cupcakes to share with the staff, lemon with a burnt sugar top she'd been experimenting with. Mr. DeLuca took one on his way out, more out of habit than hunger. Then he stopped at the door. "Who made this?" "I did," Elena said, bracing for a polite compliment and nothing more. He looked at her for a long moment. "This is better than what my pastry chef makes. Why are you serving eggs and toast here?" Elena laughed a little bitterly. "Because eggs and toast pay rent. Cupcakes don't." Mr. DeLuca sat back down. "How long have you been able to bake like this?" "Since I was 12, my grandmother taught me." 22 years, he said, doing the math out loud. "And you've never sold one?" "Nobody's going to invest in a Waitress with a $50 oven, Mr. DeLuca." He smiled, like he'd heard that excuse 100 times. "Let me tell you something that changed my life. 30 years ago, nobody needs an investment to start. They need one rule. It's called the 1% rule." "Sit down for 1 minute," he said. "You don't need to become a great baker overnight. That's what stops people. They think they need a miracle. You don't. You need 1%. 1% of what? Of anything. 1% better every single day at one thing. Here's why it works." He took a napkin and wrote on it, "If you improve just 1% every day for 1 full year, not 50%, not 10%, just 1, do you know how much better you become?" Elena shook her head. 37 times better, not 37%, 37 times, because it compounds. Day 2 isn't built on where you started. It's built on day 1's improvement. And day 3 is built on day 2's. Small changes stack on top of each other until one day you look back and you don't recognize how far you've come. Elena stared at the napkin. That's just one recipe adjustment a day. Exactly. 1% doesn't feel like anything today. That's why almost nobody does it. It feels too small to matter. That's the trap. People want a leap. The leap never comes. The 1% always does if you show up for it. He stood to leave, then turned back. Here is my offer. Every Friday for 12 weeks, bring me one thing you've made better. 1% better than last week. If by week 12 it's good enough to serve in my restaurants, I will place a standing order. But if you skip even one Friday, don't bother coming back. I don't invest in people who quit when it gets boring. And if I fail, you won't fail. You'll quit or you won't. Those are different things. That night, Elena bought a $5 notebook from the dollar store. On the first page, she wrote 3 questions. The same 3 questions Mr. DeLuca said his own mentor once gave him. 1. What did I make better today? 2. What did I learn today that I didn't know yesterday? 3. What is my 1% for tomorrow? Answer these 3 questions every night before you sleep, he'd told her. Doesn't matter if you're exhausted. Doesn't matter if today's answer is small. Some nights your answer will be, I used less sugar. That counts. Write it down. The notebook is not decoration. The notebook is proof. Proof to yourself that you are not the same person you were yesterday. The first 2 weeks were humbling. Elena would come home from a 10-hour shift, feet throbbing, and force herself to bake for 1 more hour before collapsing into bed. Her first improvement was almost embarrassing. She'd simply started sifting her flour, small, barely worth writing down. She wrote it down anyway. Week 3, she ran out of things she thought she knew and had to actually study. She watched free baking videos on her phone during her lunch break instead of scrolling. And then, around day 25, something shifted. She caught herself tasting a batch and thinking, the vanilla is fighting the lemon, not supporting it. A thought she never would have had a month earlier. Her notebook was filling up. Little arrows, little notes. Try 5 more minutes at lower heat. Worked. Week 7, Mr. DeLuca tried her caramel apple muffin. He didn't say anything for a moment, then simply nodded and said, now we're getting somewhere. Week 10. Disaster. Her oven's thermostat broke and she had nothing to bring. She almost didn't show up, ashamed, but she went anyway, empty-handed, and she told him the truth. He just said, write that down too. Showed up with nothing and told the truth. That's a 1% you'll need someday, the courage kind. Week 12. Elena walked into DeLuca's flagship restaurant with a box of 12 cupcakes. The same lemon, burnt sugar recipe from the very first day. Except now, it was, by every measure, a different cupcake. Balanced, precise, confident. Mr. DeLuca took a bite, put it down, and was quiet, long enough that Elena's stomach dropped. This, he finally said, is the best thing on my dessert menu, and it's not close. He slid a piece of paper across the table. A standing weekly order for all 3 of his restaurants. Enough on its own to match what she made at Rosie's in half the hours. Elena put in her 2 weeks' notice the next morning. 1 year later, the for rent sign on 5th Street was gone. In its place, Elena's Corner, a bakery with 6 tables and a line out the door on Saturday mornings. Mia does her homework at the corner table after school and helps decorate, which mostly means eating the mistakes. The notebook, now the 4th one, still sits by Elena's bed. She still writes in it every night, not because she has to anymore, because it's who she is now. When people ask how she built a bakery with no savings and no loan, she tells them the same thing every time. I didn't build a bakery. I built 1%, 365 times. The bakery was just what it looked like from the outside. My friend, Elena's story is proof of something simple. You don't need a miracle. You don't need a loan, a diploma, or permission. You need 1% and the discipline to write it down. Here's what most people get wrong. They wait for motivation, for the right time, for a leap big enough to matter. The leap never comes. The 1% always does, if you show up for it, tonight and every night after. So here is your challenge, the same one Mr. DeLuca gave Elena. Step 1. Tonight, before you sleep, get a notebook, paper, or the notes app on your phone. It doesn't matter. Write down today's date. Step 2. Answer 3 questions. What did I make better today? What did I learn today that I didn't know yesterday? What is my 1% for tomorrow? Even if today's answer is small, especially if it's small. Step 3. Do this every night for 90 days without skipping. Not because 90 days is magic, but because that's how long it takes to stop being something you're trying and start being something you are. Maybe you won't own a bakery in a year. Maybe you'll just be 1% better at your job, your art, your patience with your kids. But compounded 365 times, that is not a small life anymore. Elena had a $5 notebook and 1 hour a night. You have what you're using to watch this video right now, which means you already have enough. The only question left is the one Mr. DeLuca never had to ask twice. Will you write tonight's answer down? Or will you tell yourself you'll start tomorrow? The same thing you told yourself yesterday? If you're in, hit like right now as your commitment. Then comment below, what is your 1% for tomorrow? I'll be reading them. Share this with someone who keeps saying, someday, and subscribe, because every week I bring you one more story of someone who started with nothing but a decision. Remember Elena's words, I didn't build a bakery. I built 1%, 365 times. Tonight is day 1. Will you write it down?